government of Nigeria has secured about $600,000 relief fund on commitments from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to hasten relief efforts for victims of the victims of the flood devastation, as well as health and agricultural sectors reforms. Specifically, the foundation pledged the $600,000 for flood relief in Borno State and other health sector initiatives, with an additional $5 million grant approved for Lagos Business School and partners to develop the agricultural economics of industrial cassava. Now, the donation was announced when Vice President Kashim Shettima held a meeting with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation members, led by its head of Global Development Programme, Dr. Christopher Elias, on the sidelines of the 79th United Nations General Assembly in New York. And this evening, joining me as guest to discuss this further is Gboyega Olorunfemi, a project lead, Society for Planet and Prosperity. Thank you so much, Mr. Olorunfemi, for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm wondering how excited you are about this $600,000 donation by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, knowing fully well that several billions of dollars have been secured before now for either humanitarian needs or infrastructural development in Nigeria, but then we have not seen that commensurate change or impact, either in situations of devastation or catastrophe or the development of the critical sectors of the economy. So how do you feel about this?
Thank you once again, and thank you for having me. I think considering the fact that we have received such humongous amount of funding into relief and development programs in Nigeria, and we are not seeing commensurate impact, speaks to the fact that there's a lot that needed to be done around us here as a people and as a government. As much as I am excited about what has happened at Bonga 79, there's also a need for us to begin to see how this is going to play out, considering previous experience. So a number of things has to really go into this, as much as we have been struggling with identity issues and the need to actually ensure that those who are affected are duly compensated without duplication. So, I mean, this is the point I really want us to get to before we can then proceed to know how do we share this funding? I mean, this relief fund at the intersection of the real challenges, right? So people have been killed, people were injured, and almost 500,000 people are displaced. At the same time, what is expected to have been an infrastructure to protect people from that, anthropogenic disaster is actually what aided the disaster. So we must be proactive in terms of planning for development and ensure that adequate infrastructure with compulsory routine maintenance are in place. So for me, as much as I'm excited about this, I really want to believe that mistakes mistakes of the past will not repeat themselves.
Do you call it mistakes, Mr. Gboyega Olorunfemi? Are they mistakes, or you would want to see them? I don't know. I'm not trying to influence your opinion, but some people see it as, deliberate attempts to actually circumvent the well-being of the people, because funds are being allocated. For instance, 762 million naira before now had been budgeted in over 12 years to actually repair this same Alao Dam. But we've not seen any sort of repair or rehabilitation on this particular asset. And some Nigerians are saying maybe it's just failure in terms of fiscal responsibility, oversight, or, people just coming around to share funds that should have gone into a humanitarian cause.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the word mistake may have come maybe perhaps regarding what we failed to do. But what is important is maybe the right word is negligence. and the fact that there are no consequences for bad behaviors in the past. So what should be done is for as much fund that has been released or budgeted for, who are the officers put in charge of distribution of this fund or management of this fund? Can they provide account of stewardship that is transparent without and is corruption-free? So, I mean, you're correct to see that it's a failure, right? But again, who are the people who let the nation down? So we need to shame as many people who continue to put the nation into this state of disrepute as often as it has come. So if this has happened, and then we have not heard of anyone either being sacked or being put under under question, then everybody, somebody else will look out for what happens next and then want to take its own time. So it's time for us to really be bullish when it comes to letting people give account of where they are asked to take charge of.
There is one area that I'd like us to touch on, and that has to do with the ecological fund. That particular fund was put together, or is being put together, depending on percentages to be taken from the government coffers from federal allocation, about 3% of what Nigeria generates, I guess, monthly into that particular fund to mitigate impacts of disaster or ecological emergencies. Of course, you are an advocate for the prosperity of the planet, so to speak. And we know that funds like this should go into ensuring that, when there are emergencies, there are issues that has to do with the environment, these funds will be used to mitigate or even prevent, the impacts. Have you ever heard of this ecological fund? Have you ever seen where government agencies, those in charge of it, have used these monies over the years as it's been accumulating to actually deal with ecological emergencies?
Thank you. I've actually heard much about the ecological fund, and then and each time I see some of the projects most states have committed them to, you will have a need to rethink if there has not been capacity gap in letting the managers of the states know the true definition of what ecological fund is meant for. I think, to be honest, the government needs to actually carry out an holistic audit of what projects ecological fund has been committed to. Many of them were maybe some, the issues of climate change and ecological challenges varies across states. So perhaps some states felt that they don't have as much stronger effect around their state. So they have the fund lying somewhere, and some of the funds were either used as palliative or used as incentives for some of their programs. So there's need for an holistic audit of what ecological fund since inception has been used for, and demand accountability on the part of those who are asked to manage it. And of course, for reason of planning, if we don't have adequate planning in place, or ensure that every state that has received ecological funding have made adequate planning and sufficient preparedness for it, then there's need for misuse. So in order to checkmate misuse going forward, considering all that we have seen happen now, we need to also build capacity of those who have to be put in charge of this fund, and ensure that they have key performance index at the end of the day. So for every year or every 6 months, we want to see the track. We want to see a tracker of what you have spent such funding for. And I think that will make anyone in that position sit up.
I'm wondering which agency, which ministry or department will be overseeing the check on KPIs of these states when it comes to how they expend funds meant for emergencies, catastrophes like this. If I'm going to narrow it down to what happened in Borno State with the flooding, the state's got about 816.34 million naira from the so-called ecological fund between January and June 2024. That is this year. The previous year, we are talking about 749.68 million naira between the same period, January, June, and according to what we know, just about 2% or so were spent on ecological projects. And a lot of people believe that if those funds had been well managed, the impact that we saw in the north, in Borno State, will not be as much as was recorded. So if we are going to lay this at the table of maybe a body that should look into this, what body would you be looking at? What should they be looking at? How do we speak of accountability? How do we make sure that these states are accountable? What are the yardsticks to judge that these states expend the funds for the projects that they are meant for?
Thank you. So, if we must, put this on the table to look at who is meant to look at. It's a bit of saying who will guard the guards. For socio-ecological fund, which is more or less a special purpose fund for the state to achieve a certain level of sanity regarding environmental challenges. I think it will not be too much as much as yes, the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning is there. It will also not be too much to have a special task force to be put in place. We have seen a lot of task force put in place that has failed in the past, but in the real sense of it, we can always try and ensure that those who are put in charge are also made to be accountable. Create a dashboard that is accessible at every point in time. At so amount has gone to XYZ state. Once a penny is spent from that account, it must go into that dashboard that is tracked at the national. And this can be, that means civil society organizations would also be made to be part of this task force, so they can also be able to provide accountability in case of any unfair attention to it. But what is important is that we can leverage on our digital ministry on our digital experience and ensure that we have a dashboard that is live and is able to capture what is being spent, what is left in every state's purse, and what is meant to be spent. So states would also have to prepare a plan or projects that are due or that are also fundable under such fund. These are a number of things that can be put in place. Create a dashboard, ensure that states funding are transparent, ensure that what is being spent is recorded, ensure that what is left is accessible, ensure that a project that state is going to commit these funds are programs that fits for purpose under the definition of the fund. And I think this will help a lot to put everybody under their toes to ensure that these funds are not just committed to any incentives or any palliative measures across the state.
Okay, let's stay away from finance for now and look at the operationalization of efforts when it comes to mitigating or preventing natural disasters such as floods and the likes. Now, of course, I could safely say that you are an environmentalist, and I know that, there are flood control measures, there are disaster preparedness efforts, response infrastructure initiatives, maybe buffer dams to be built, windbreakers to be implemented, monitoring and evaluation of situations like this according to what the weather might provide in terms of information. What we know is that we have a NIMET that comes up with information every now and then talking about inclement weather and the weather patterns and the likely effect it might have on, let me say, an environment or a locality as we speak. But then apart from those kind of information, we don't see critical deliberate steps like I just mentioned earlier to see how, these things can be curbed. And I'm wondering if we have agencies, so an agency, both at the national or subnational level, that can go through this process, exact this process to see how they can mitigate the impact of the people. Because at the end of the day, it is people that die. And we keep rolling out statistics. but then it seems as though we are not proactive. Is there a way we can go around this to reduce the numbers or to save lives as much as we can?
For these, there's always been a way, and I think a number of things are already in place to actually, call the attention of the state governments into some of these challenges. At the Site for Planet and Prosperity, last year in November, we launched a report that considered mapping of climate change impacts, policy, and action at the subnational level. We identified some of the key challenges and gaps across the 36 states of Nigeria, including the FCT. And then we did this in close collaboration with the Department of Climate Change of the Federal Ministry of Environment and the Nigeria Governors Forum. And what that means is that every governor in Nigeria has a copy of that report. And the report in itself should serve as more or less the biblical, pocket paper for impact, policy, and actions at the state level. A number of factors come in when we are supposed to build effective emergency preparedness and response planning into what happens on a daily basis. But what is important is that people are aware that some of these things are in place. So who is to help to get people to know that these are in place? We have a national orientation agency that should be working at all levels with the state government, utilizing social media, using radio, using television. And of course, you know that Nigerian population is more around the young people. Is to understand where are these people taking information from, and then push this information for everybody to know about this. How many of our population know that we need at least an early warning system and flood forecasting at some point in time? How many of us listen to news at some point? In 2005, when I was serving in Adamawa State, if there's any news that I need to know, is about the environment, the one that comes towards the end, for me to be aware of what is happening in the environment. So we must find a way of getting this information to people. The gaps continue to increase on a daily basis, and we cannot afford to watch as things unfold. The situation in Maiduguri is indeed ridiculous, but at the same time, we cannot move on like nothing has happened. It's a shame that this has happened, but we must begin to prepare and ensure that there's a lot of education, there's a lot of awareness, there's a lot of plan in place to ensure that this does not reoccur. So the entire arms of government, we have, as much as there is NIMET, there is there's NIHSA, and the Nigeria Orientation Agency. These agencies should come together and work across the state. There are state-owned broadcasting state services. There are federal-owned broadcasting services. Are you saying we cannot get free airtime, 10 minutes, 20 minutes to broadcast things that has to do with the environment on a daily basis? I'm sure if we make so much noise about it, not noise in the real sense, if we create consistency in this awareness, everybody and the citizenry will be aware to know that these are some of the things we need to know. And I think in an electioneering process, we should begin to integrate climate change confidence text on those who are going to be governing us. I think it's high time to begin to look at this. So some of these situations don't catch some of our leaders unaware. Thank you.
Okay, so even as we wrap up, of course, we're looking at this $600,000 relief fund being provided by Bill and Melinda Gates, and part of it should go into the health and the agricultural sectors. I'd like to find out, with this kind of liquid mobility, what kind of reforms or change would you like to see in these two sectors, the health and the agricultural space?
I think we already have a lot of reforms, a lot of policy reforms put together in place. The key thing is the courage to implement these reforms, right? If we're courageous enough to implement some of the existing policies that we have in place. I have attended several that has made it to be like we are always talking. And it's the cliche is most of these workshops are now talk show. Where is action? So there's a need to act on every existing portfolios that are being in place. Economic planning that has in intersection with some of these policies, funding that needs to be allocated to them should be put in place. $600,000 has come in. We need to know, that this is what this fund is going to take care of. It's not that we have heard today that this fund has come. We want to be assured that the fund will serve its purpose. So we must act on all existing policy that's in place. We must bring everyone together, both from public sector, private sector, the CSOs, as much as they are really working hard to ensure that Nigeria gets what it needs, gets required funding for research and development, should also be embraced and encouraged and not be tagged as corrupt, as we have seen from what the Minister of Women Affairs expressed at UNGA. So everybody must work together and see that we have a whole of the nation coming together to ensure that we solve the challenges that we currently face. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Gboyega Olorunfemi, Project Lead, Society for Planet and Prosperity. Well, the Vice President, while representing the President at the United Nations General Assembly a few days back, talked extensively as regards all that you have mentioned. Impressive speech, I must say. We just hope that Nigerians and the Nigerian economy will be impressed when it comes to implementation. It was nice talking to you, I must say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I sincerely appreciate the time with you.